This is the BC City Connection podcast. Thanks for joining us. Richard Pyatt here. Happy to bring you these episodes, and maybe you're finding them in one of a few ways. One way certainly is as an audio podcast, and thanks for clicking the play button on that. You may be looking at the video version, which is on the city's YouTube channel. Thanks for finding us there. Or, heck, you might be seeing us on Access Vision. Thanks for that. What's the point? The point is, we're out there in a number of different ways, and we invite you to subscribe to the BC City Connection so that you're up to date when these episodes drop. We're going to talk about something we've alluded to and certainly discussed in the past, and we're going to get an update now on the lead, I suppose the word is reclamation in Battle Creek. And you might remember when we've talked about this in the past, there's been a nice shot in the arm, financially, that is, to continue to do this effort, and that's been renewed. Emily Arntz is here from the City of Battle Creek, lead grant coordinator, to talk with us about the latest. Hello, Emily.
Hi, Richard. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for being here today. This is, so you joined the city in January, and you have now been completely a study on this whole process. What did you know about lead pipes before this? Probably not nearly as much as you know now.
Yeah, absolutely nothing. I came from a background of social work and housing, but really knew nothing about lead except just the basic disclosures you're supposed to give renters when they move in.
Yeah, and that has certainly changed to the extent now that you are more than familiar with the challenge of lead in the community.
Mhm.
And what does that look like? Remind us.
Yeah, so there's a large housing stock within Calhoun County that was built before 1978, so much so that it takes up 75% of that housing stock. So with that being the case, lead was banned in 1978, so majority of that housing stock probably has a high likelihood of lead paint.
Yeah.
With that in mind, it leads to exposures for kids, pregnant women, and older adults. So that could, increase blood lead levels in these kiddos, causing detrimental health effects.
Yeah, that's another aspect of lead that maybe is less publicized. I don't know. I'm just going on my own gut feeling here than the pipe thing, that the notion of lead paint is one in which there's been a generation of people, I think, who have grown up without us really talking a whole lot about it. When I was a kid, lead paint was still beginning to be recognized as a problem, and then efforts ramping up to deal with that. And now, if you're my age, you say, man, are we still dealing with that? We are. This is an incredible situation in which paint lasts a long time. And in some older structures, that stuff is still there. And this is what you've been trying to get your head around.
Absolutely. And like you said, people wonder if it's still around. I was getting my hair done at one point and I was telling the hairdresser what my job was. And she said, "Oh, that was banned so long ago.
Yeah.
Is it still an issue?" And I said, "Yeah, it's under layers of paint. Buildings have been repainted and it's still there and it can be exposed through bumps and hits on walls. So, yeah, it is absolutely still a big issue."
Wow. It is incredible to imagine that for some of us. I'm probably in that category, as I've said, because it's hard to imagine that lead paint hasn't been covered over or somehow reclaimed, removed over the course of 50 years. But
Right.
as you point out, it's still there. In fact, Calhoun County has a wild ranking here as it relates to lead paint in children, right?
Absolutely. So, yeah, as of 2023, Calhoun County ranked 6 out of all 83 counties with the highest elevated blood lead levels in kiddos. Matching that with the housing stock built before 1978, of course, those numbers make sense. So, we're hoping we can get those testing increased and get those levels down for the kids.
Yeah, and of course, help us understand what's the danger here for those of us who might not know.
Yeah, absolutely. So younger kids have a higher risk and exposure to lead just because of those hand to mouth tendencies. They're closer to the ground, which is where lead dust settles. So that can cause an array of health and mental disorders. So nervous system and kidney damage, learning disabilities, attention deficit disorder, decrease in intelligence, speech, language, and behavior programs, and so much more. And if it's to a large enough amount, it can even cause death.
Well, the hand to mouth thing certainly makes a lot of sense as a young body is developing and curiosity, all of that
Yeah.
stuff. If there's a piece of lead paint on the floor, it might go right in the mouth. But as you point out, some of it is not chips of paint. We're talking about dust here.
Hmm.
And so the hand to mouth thing with this waste, I guess you'd say, of paint is unintentional, but it happens.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So how are we dealing with this in Battle Creek?
So the city offers two programs. So we have two lead grant programs. One is a state-specific program for kids on Medicaid. So that is our CHIP program. We've had that grant since 2018, and it's done amazing work throughout the whole county. I think within that grant, we've abated 166 homes or units, housing units. And then we have the HUD led grant, which we've had since 2021. That was a 4-year grant. So this one was fairly new to us. And within that 4-year period, we have completed 37 projects.
And when we say abated, what does that really mean? What do we go through to get the lead out?
Yeah,
There's the phrase, right?
yeah.
But it's true.
Um, Great question. So, abatement is a permanent removal of the lead. So, it removes any lead hazards that are within the house or even outside of the house. So, that could be enclosure. So, you permanently enclose whatever surface that is, it's removal, and encapsulant, which is it's usually like a paint cover on certain surfaces. So,
Hmm.
those typically last for 10 plus years if it's done correctly.
All right. So I want to make sure I understood that. There's a way to get rid of lead paint and its derivatives, dust, and so on, but you have to do it a certain way.
Mhm.
And then there's a potential that some of it might still remain. Is that what you're saying? It's good for 10 years. What does that really mean?
Yes. So, like I said, you can enclose that lead paint, but if things are hit or rubbed against, then that could wear away over time.
I see.
But the goal of enclosing it well enough is that it's airtight, it's sealed to prevent any of that lead paint coming back out.
Yeah. And if you're, as you say, enclosing it, I presume that means painting over it or some other processes therein. It probably would take a lot of repeated rubbing on it or some other way to wear that down.
Absolutely. It's usually, well, one way I should say is drywall, so adding another layer, a thicker layer over top of that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it's generally far away from young mouths that might be tempted to taste it or in some other way expose themselves. So these grants, continuing to have these grants clearly is important. If we are number 6 out of 83 counties for elevated blood lead levels in Calhoun County, we're doing work here with these funds, but there's more to be done, right?
Absolutely. And thankfully, we were just re-awarded that CHIP grant at the end of August, and we were awarded $1,345,000 to assist a minimum of 21 units for families enrolled in Medicaid. And then we have an application in for another HUD grant for another 4 years, and we're hoping to hear about that award early October.
Okay, so these things happen right around the same time. So hopefully, then the second award comes in and we have even more to deal with. Now, how do you decide where to focus your attention on this?
Once people apply and they qualify, so again, the CHIP is Medicaid funded, so kids do have to be enrolled in Medicaid. And then the HUD one is for families who make under 80% area median income. That's one of the requirements. And then if the kids do test with a high elevated blood lead level, we'll focus on those as our primary families. And then if families live in older housing stock, so let's say before 1950, 1925, the ones that might have a higher lead paint content, we'll focus on those first. So we'll go out throughout Calhoun County. I think some of our biggest areas or target areas is Battle Creek, Homer, Albion, and Springfield.
Okay, where some of those older, I mean, really older homes are situated, and try and focus on that. So Someone's listening to this and they say, okay, yeah, my house is that old. I qualify. What do I do now? How do they apply?
Yeah, so our application is easily accessible. It is on the city's website under the Community Development Division page, and we have a Lead Safe program page that you can go on. It has the application right there. It'll take you to our application website, which is called Neighborly. And so you'll just create an account, you'll fill that out. It's pretty user friendly, but if you need some extra assistance, you are welcome to come into City Hall and have us help you fill that out, or you can give our intake specialist a call to set up an appointment.
Okay. And then what happens? There's an approval process and then some steps after that. Is that right?
Yeah, so again, if you meet all of those requirements, we'll get you approved. We will then conduct what's called a preliminary field investigation or a PFI. So we'll have our intake specialists and our construction specialists come out to your home. They'll go over our program information. They'll do a walkthrough of the house, kind of look for those hazards, potential paint spots, and then they'll go around and take some pictures for reference. After that, they'll order what's called a LIRA or a lead inspection risk assessment, where we contract out an environmental company. They'll come into your house. They will take x-ray photos of every painted surface within the house. And then they'll also look, so the risk assessment part is they'll look for those hazards. So big cracks or flaking paint, anything that could create those paint chips or the dust. Once that LIRA comes back to us and it shows that there is lead paint in the home, then our construction specialist will create what's called a scope of work. So he'll write out everything that has lead in it and what needs work done. And then that will go out to bid for contractors. Once that's awarded to a contractor, they will come and start that process. They'll sign the contract. If the family needs to be relocated, we'll get that squared away, all for free. Usually it's a minimum of 10 business days that they're gone from the house. We try to make it less than that. It just depends on the scope of the work.
Hmm.
And then finally, once the work is done, that environmental company will come back out and conduct what's called a clearance. So they'll make sure they're like all the lead hazards are taken care of, all the work was completed per the scope of work that was created before it went out to bid. And once it does pass clearance, the family is able to move back in and hopefully their home will be lead safe for 10 plus years.
Yeah, so this is not willy-nilly, folks. Listen to this. I mean, there is an evaluation that takes place, so you know exactly where you stand lead-wise before the work gets done. And then I presume this is true. Tell me if it isn't, Emily, that the notion that if there's a significant presence, then there's a priority to try and reclaim that right away,
hmm
or at least as fast as possible.
Yes, absolutely.
Sure. And then on the other end of that, you're getting a final, I was tempted to say bill of health on the status of lead in the home, right? There's going to be another test to make sure that it's been completed correctly.
Essentially, yes, bill of health. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, right. This is very significant. Now, folks have an opportunity to avail themselves of resources that will give them more information about lead. Now, I realize some folks may have clicked on this and maybe they're hearing about this for the first time and well, lead, what? There are other resources you can cite in information gathering on this, right?
Sure. So on the city's website, on our Lead Safe program page, we have a whole list of resources, but I highly recommend going to the Calhoun County Public Health Department. They actually do lead testing themselves. They do the capillary test, so a little finger poke. And if that does come back, they'll recommend you go to a lab to get a venous test. They also have great resources on how to increase your nutrition to get that lead out of your body, so increasing calcium and iron. They also provide case management follow-ups if your kiddo does test for an elevated blood lead level. Another great resource is the state. So the state has their own Michigan Lead Safe website that you can go on, and there's great resources for you as a parent, for your kids, for professionals. And they cover everything from your health to how to clean your home and resources that are available local to you.
Boy, this is a big project and certainly something that has evolved, as we've noted, over the course of decades to identify these dangers and then set in place this motion to try and perform these reclamations so that the abatement can take place and you can be healthier in your own home. But boy, has it taken time, hasn't it? And these grants have really helped make a difference in terms of getting that abatement done in a lot of areas. But when, let me look at that number again, when you're 6 out of 83 counties for highest venous elevated blood test levels, blood lead levels in children, I should say, this is significant. So if you're living in a home built before 1978, might be worth checking on, but certainly if it's older than that, this is particularly of a concern for the city, certainly, and as you've heard, the county and the state. So do what you can. And if you are not clear about these links, maybe you're listening to this while you're walking or biking or driving, we'll put these links in the show notes for this episode, easily found on the Calhoun County website or at battlecreekpodcast.com. So we'll have it all there and you can click through. Great information here, Emily. Congratulations on all the good work and the re-awarding of at least one grant, hopefully two, maybe by the time folks are listening to this. So thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And thank you all for listening.
Emily Arntz with the City of Battle Creek, Lead Grant Coordinator, here on the BC City Connection.